no one's perfect, and we all go through these periods of stress. Every single one of us. I'm under one myself right now, and yeah, this is life. But Athletica can help us just be aware of these things and navigate our training accordingly.
Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Each week, renowned sports scientist and founder of Athletica AI, Dr. Paul Laursen, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Marjaana Rakai, and coach and cyclist Paul Warloski discuss training, racing, and improving your health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. How do you know if all the work you're doing in your training is paying off, that it's working? How do you know if you're getting fitter?
One of our athletes, the Primal Swede, who we interviewed on episode 37, I believe, he posted two interesting photos on his Instagram that I snapped. Eric has a long history of long endurance cycling, but now has signed up for 90K ultra run in January. So these two interesting posts were one where he shared a picture of his latest cycling, where he compares aerobic decoupling, which was only 1.5%, with his running training data. And in the running training data, he shows aerobic decoupling 11%. The twist here comes also from Georgios in Greece, who saw these posts and was asking, hey guys, we need an episode with an example how to read the data. So here we are, we've got the data. We're going to add the pictures for our YouTube watchers.
Okay, so let's talk about the situation, right? We've got these aerobic decoupling differences. In the first instance with Eric, he's a cyclist, he's an experienced cyclist, and we see that really low number on the aerobic decoupling, 1.5. We can see that one. And and again, we're going to go to the run one, and it's really high, right? It's like what do we got? 11.54%. That's right. Okay, so how have we got these numbers, and why do they matter? And and how they are calculated is due to that number that's above it, or that variable that's a number. It's called the efficiency factor. And what the efficiency factor is it's a look at your pace or power versus your heart rate. We've talked about load before, stress. We're talking about an external load divided by an internal load, and that is your efficiency factor. So, and what we're looking at in the aerobic decoupling variable that we see here, Eric's questioning, is we're looking at the difference between the second half efficiency factor, again, remember, power or pace versus heart rate, and the first half efficiency factor. So basically it splits the workout into two halves. In other words, are you going as efficiently in the back half of your session compared to how efficient you're going in the first half of the session? And hopefully you can understand that Eric, it doesn't really matter the session, but Eric he was very efficient right across his entire bike workout, which you would expect because Eric is a cyclist. And Eric now, like you say, MJ, he's just taken up running. He's not as efficient in his running. He is his second half efficiency factor is way off kilter compared to the first one, where the first half of it. In other words, he's getting, like, the pace and the heart rate are dissociating further and further away. We're seeing what you've probably heard of as heart rate drift, right? The heart rate is going up and the pace is going down. And he doesn't get that when he bikes, because he's a conditioned and well-tuned cyclist. So that is how you can read your data. You can look at that aerobic decoupling number. And as you develop more experience as an athlete, you'll start to see that number is looking generally lower and lower towards. In fact, like many of my very well trained and efficient athletes will see a negative in that number, and that means, of course, that they're more efficient in the back half than the first half. So this is a great little test in many of my elites as they work towards longer and longer sessions, and we see this so often. So that is how we read that number. It's very close to the concept of durability. You want to be very durable across your overall exercise, training session. You want to have a high pace relative to the heart rate, a high external load stress relative to your internal stress. You want your internal stress to kind of be low. That is the case for Eric's cycling, not just yet for the running. He's got more work to do.
Another thing I was thinking, speaking specifically to Georgios, like if you notice, or anyone else who noticed, that their running aerobic decoupling needs some work, is to maybe increase frequency of the runs before length of the runs. So just instead of spacing them every other day, maybe run twice a day or every day before a little bit longer break, so that you get that neuromuscular load a little bit more often and see how that affects your aerobic decoupling.
Yeah, for sure. And we've spoken about that on previous podcasts, specifically when we're talking about running. And some of the questions we get often, just as a reminder, in the running is, people, where's the long run? Where's the really, really long run at the end of every week? And that's, whether you're a triathlon plan or a marathon plan. And the reason we don't see the big, huge long run and large neuromuscular stress that you alluded to, MJ, is because just that we'd rather have the increased overall mileage in the week. And we get that through an increase in frequency of exercise training. So it's like you're spacing out the load across the week. And that's why Athletica programs it that way.
So to get back to our initial question about how do we know if we're getting fitter, aerobic decoupling coming down is one way. Is that, and
Correct.
correct.
Yeah.
So let's look, since Athletica has a lot of charts and several charts and graphs that are going to help us understand our fitness. Let's do kind of a deeper dive into some of these performance and recovery charts, see what they mean and how they can help us understand our progress. So the main chart that's on the screen that we will try to talk about is the performance potential chart. And, so Paul, first of all, what are people seeing? What can you describe what's on that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, your performance potential chart that we see here, this is Marjaana's, and we can kind of see that the key variable there that we're looking at is the blue line, the fitness, and that's the one that most people kind of are eyeballing. That's on the y-axis, and then we can see this is this is over time, right? So we've got dates continuing into the future, and in general, we're sort of seeing build phases. And you think about it, you want to gain fitness, right? And that is really what the blue line is kind of showing, is you're seeing this slow accumulation of fitness. And you get that through the accumulation of stress in your life. So it's the whole process of stress and recover, stress and recover. And the stress is viewed in a more of a short-term marker, an element of fatigue. And we're getting these numbers from something in your calendar that you'll see as reflected as load. So load is the best way we can kind of quantify your stress, and you're getting that from your wearables. So you're doing the training session, you're monitoring or measuring yourself, and through the monitoring of your pace or power or heart rate, comes back and we get a measure of your stress, and that's all reflected in here. And you're going to get fitter and fitter and fitter over time. And then, and that's really what the accumulation of that blue marker, that's why it's getting higher and higher, you can see up to February, where Marjaana is training for something. What are you training for, Marjaana?
Ski marathon.
There you go.
The Berkey.
Berkey.
There you
Yeah.
go. That is it. And this is kind of like the main algorithm and driver of your day-to-day training, training stress or training load. All your sessions are adapting. You'll see this. They're adapting daily based on what you're doing, all based on the algorithms that are central to the performance potential chart.
How does that help us? If we're looking at this and it's into the future, are we just seeing that, yes, we're moving into the right direction?
It does, exactly. So
Okay.
it's it gives us confidence. So when I'm coaching MJ and I'm talking to her, and when she's coaching her athletes, this is just bringing us a little bit of confidence that we're moving in the right direction, just like you said, Paul. So we know the direction we're going, and we and we actually get to see what actually gets done, and where we actually move that to. Right, it's good to have a plan. Whether the plan actually gets executed or not is another thing. It depends on your context, but yeah, this is setting us in the right direction. It's giving us the guardrails that we're going to push along, and we know if we follow the plan as laid out, we're going to get to that objective. So that can also give us motivation and confidence to go and do it. And yeah, that's those are my thoughts on it. Am I missing anything, MJ?
It doesn't always end up looking that perfect.
Well said.
And it's okay, because these are just numbers, and I loved all the data, but life is messy and imperfect, and it's okay if it goes up and down.
That's right.
The blue line, it will go
Yeah,
up and down.
it will. It will. And it won't always be the perfect increase up as well. And the other thing that often messes with that sometimes, we get this feedback a lot, is it can often relate to user settings. So, for example, when we have a fit user that kind of comes in and maybe they're on a mid-volume plan, and they're almost kind of, and they're putting in their hours in the week. Maybe they're putting in, I can train from anywhere from 8 to 15 hours, right? And maybe they're at the top of that, in terms of their overall fitness. Well, if you put in your max hours of 15, Athletica is not going to violate that. And therefore, you might not be able to get any higher than that. You might be kind of hamstringing Athletica to increase that further. Easy solution, if you do actually have more time and you want that blue line to go higher, go make a change in your settings and just readjust the plan, and you'll see that number will start to rise again. So yeah, keep that in mind, that a lot of these are based on the user's settings.
That's a good point. That's what I did on the build up to the world champs. I increased my volume, and I saw a little bit sharper climb. And
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Good point.
So the next chart is talking about power and pace profiling, which we've talked about recently in episode 48, and we're going to link to that in the show notes. But let's talk about the running pace profile. Each discipline has a separate chart. So there's one for cycling, swimming, running, and rowing. But let's specifically get into the running pace chart. I mean, Paul, could you describe what you've created and what data this is showing?
Yep. So first of all, I'm going to give full credit back to Andrea Zignoli that we had on the podcast before, in terms of the real creator of this. This is based on probably the latest or the newest. It's considered gold standard best practice. Peter Leo's work, a colleague of ours, works for. I forget which pro cycling teams picked him up recently, but he's with one of the top pro cycling teams. I think he might still be with Green Edge, the Aussies.
Yeah.
He's awesome, and we're so grateful to be be colleagues with him. But we leverage all of the various different features that are important. We average the anaerobic power reserve model, and that is in the first 2 minutes. You can see there. in the chart that we're showing. So those first 2 minutes, so there it's kind of spiking up sharply. That is that your so-called anaerobic work is in that first 2 minutes, and this is we spoke already in the podcast about neuromuscular capacity. So that's really what we're looking at in there. So how much force and power can you produce? Power in the cycling context, and then let's just call it force application on the ground to push off and move forward. So that's really what we're looking in that first bit. The second model that we leveraged is called the critical speed model, and that's across 2 minutes to 1 hour, 2 minutes to 60 minutes. And here we're really looking at if you're in the cycling world, you'll be familiar more with with the FTP, your functional threshold power. So critical speed is similar to that, except the cool thing about how we gain that is you don't necessarily have to do 20 minutes all out. You could do a variety of different ways. That being said, it does work better with longer periods of exercise, and 20 minutes actually isn't too bad of an all out exercise duration to get your critical speed or critical power. And this is really deciphering or determining your threshold. Okay, so that your FTP or your critical power, critical pace will be determined, and this anchors all of your many of your training zones. So this is how it kind of loops back into the whole training zones and loops back into the actual prescription that you're doing. And then the last one is called the Omni Power model, and that's when you can see it going blue again after the 1 hour area there. So we'll actually see, it goes into the longer durations there, and it continues to work. It's called the Omni Power model. And this is new to Athletica, but we're working towards somewhat enhanced simplicity. So we're starting with just pulling out the key variables that are in there. So the first one, you can see the VT1. And in this example here, VT1 is 5:46 minutes per kilometer. We can see at the top there. And that is basically looking at that, your zone 2 and below running speed. Okay, so that's where this is. We've talked about in the last podcast. We spoke about aerobic training and aerobic base. That's all the work that you're doing in that aerobic foundation, aerobic base period. The mid zone is kind of between those two lines, between the critical speed and the VT1. Okay, that's your mid zone that's sitting right in there. And then that's ultimately your zone 3. We're looking at your zone 3 range right there. Zone 4 is really now above that critical speed number. So everything above that is sort of your zone 4. So you'd be doing threshold efforts up there, and that's what you'd be doing in the above the critical speed. And now we're actually starting to move into the new variable there. You see it as MAS. We can see MAS is at 4:44 minutes per kilometer. And this is really where we're looking at work that's been done, again, through modeling in that 2 to 5 minute region. And this is like your VO2 max running speed or VO2 max running power. Okay, so that's your MAS, maximal aerobic speed, or maximal aerobic power. And last but not least is the maximal top speed. MMS is 2:23. So this is where we've picked up a 5-second period of maximal sprinting, and it's 2:23 minutes per kilometer. So very, very quick. That's right.
So I often use this chart to help athletes kind of start to figure out their pacing plans for races. Marjaana and Paul, how do you use these charts?
Yeah, that's a great example. So, for example, I'm running a marathon in about a month. This is my last 6 weeks, so there is one marathon pace there. So if you're looking at 4-hour pace, I can't see from this chart, but it is somewhere very close to the VT one. So 5:45 around there. So I can kind of calculate. I can keep this pace for my entire marathon. So 5:45 ish. So that's a little over 4-hour marathon. And then I can use that information to pace myself, whether it's even pace or negative split.
That's right. So it's a super useful chart because you can do exactly like MJ says. So think about your goal time, or a likely time of any of your events that are in question. There's no guesses. Like the likely pace is sitting right in front of you in terms of this profile. So we all dream about being Christian Blumenfeld, or name your, or Danielle Reef, or name your your superstar that's kind of out there. But the reality is kind of sitting right in front of us here. This is in training. This is what I'm capable of doing. And granted, in racing, it's time to kind of maybe lift the game, but it's probably not going to be a whole lot more than what we sort of already see here, especially if you're doing key sets. So you can work backwards from these key sets. Like really, that is what the training in Athletica, at least, is all about. It's we're taking pieces of the race, we're giving that to you, or feeding that to you, so that you are prepared optimally for your race. But you can see where those sustainable paces are going to be throughout your whole profile. And yeah, like if you're you kind of work out the speed that you're going at in the context of a flat road race, say for example. If I can maintain 40 kilometers an hour for 1 hour, then that's probably, and it, I'm at 270 watts to do that. Well, that's probably where I should be kind of pacing. Maybe I'll be able to lift a little bit on the day, but that's probably where it's sort of sitting there. Or, in a 5K race, and I know if I can run 4-minute kilometers for, that's probably going to be probably sitting around that 20 minutes there, right? So, and you kind of you can do the math yourself on all these things, and you can even flick over to the zone calculations, and they're usually sitting there as well, because it loops back to the zones. So the pace that you should be geared for the event in question that you're training for is also there to help you. And so, yeah.
All right, let's look at just because it's completely different, not completely different, but has different parameters. Let's look at the swimming pace profile and check that out. What can we see from that, and what do we learn from this?
Well, the swimming pace profile is, it has similar elements, we're seeing a certain pace in terms of critical speed, in terms of the VT1 speed, and then we've got the same sort of things in there: the maximal aerobic speed, and the peak speed as well, the very fast one. So I'm not sure what you think about those ones, Marjaana, but is this your profile?
Yes, it's my profile. Yeah.
Yeah. So the VT1 would be like, so maybe you were going to do an English channel. Could you just kind of sit and do English channel swimming at 2 minutes per 100 meters?
I'm sorry, but I don't know how to swim that slow. that VT1 is it is not doable for me.
Okay.
It's too slow.
Okay.
That would be
Maybe
my
needs an
pace.
adjustment. That's awesome. What about the critical speed? So that's like your hour pace.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty bang on. Like that's usually what I can do.
That's good. Well,
Works works
they're
with
only 25 seconds off.
maybe that's my weakness in swimming. I can't go slow. I can only go one pace. Critical speed.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. The other thing that's notice your maximal aerobic speed, VO2 max speed. It's not much different than your critical speed, but that's
Hmm.
probably because you're missing you're missing some key VO2, I guess, training sessions, right? So remember, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So
That's
the
right.
assessment can only be as good as the data that's coming in there. But I'm not sure how many 2 to 5 minute efforts you've been kind of doing
I
recently,
have
all
been
out.
in the pool once since
Um,
World Championships, so
There you go.
that's probably why.
That's probably why. Yeah.
So
So
there's probably just like a one. This data is probably my World Championships race data.
yeah.
I had a revelation here that kind of relates to the primal Swedes question about neuromuscular efficiency. If you look at my running pace profile, it totally looks like a diesel engine,
mm,
not super steep on the uh, sprint to 2 minute pace. Like it's pretty flat. But look at my bike or cycling power profile. Like I can get into quite high watts within the short term
Mm-hmm.
power. So when I'm looking at this, like as a triathlete, um, I'm seeing a lot higher power on the cycling than my speed in running. That tells me I can, I'm more efficient on the bike that I'm on running.
Possibly. I think actually for both, and the system is actually, we've missed this until now, but it's actually, if we look at the insights, so in every profile, it actually gives at the top the written textual insights, and it's actually telling us how valid the profile is. So if I could just read out your running one, and it says that your profile is constructed using the best averages logged during the period in the selected period. Please note that this reflects your abilities um, within the performance used to generate. So again, that's the GIGO kind of comment, right? We note some data inconsistency within the short duration domain between 2 and 5 minutes. It's likely due to limited available data across maximal efforts in that range. So it's asking you for more data. It's asking you for some
Mhm.
harder efforts, specifically in the 30 to 60 second all out and the 2 to 5 minute all out. And it's asking you that. I won't repeat it again, but it's asking you that for at least for that was the running one, and then in the
Mhm.
bike one, it's asking for more within the VO2 max intensity too. It says that your maximal aerobic power in the bike seems a bit low compared to your peak value, suggesting a possible limitation at VO2 max intensity. Please make sure you begin VO2 and short hit bike sessions well rested and push to the best of your abilities. It feels that you're missing, I guess, long interval VO2 max work, 2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that's what I haven't done.
Isn't
sounds
that
like we
cool?
need to
Yeah,
change. We need to change our Wednesday workouts.
working on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I have some ideas now from the article that we referred to on the last podcast
Hmm.
um, with Ingvild Odden.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's showing that your critical power is a little close to your maximal aerobic power, right? Your MAP.
Mhm.
So yeah, you kind of want those a little bit wider. And same certainly for the run, right? For the run, your critical power relative to maximal aerobic power only like 10 watts difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, you need that more work in the 2 to 5 minutes, which is hard to do, right? Like those are hard efforts to do, but yeah, it
Mhm.
shows that you're potentially deficient in those from an analysis standpoint.
Yeah.
So it's cool how it's really helping us coach.
Let's talk about the recovery profile, and there's a couple of charts that go with that: the HRV and the heart rate profile. Paul, can you talk about those?
You bet. Yeah. And we'll link to the latest paper on this too. This is just emerging as we're recording on the podcast, but this will be out by the time it's live. And yeah, this is really a unique to Athletica um, analysis. And this is, again, credit to Andrea and his team back there. But we're looking at, and we've talked about this before, but we're looking at our normal range, which is your 60-day running average of heart rate variability. And you want that normal range. You want to see, well, what's normal for you? And then we're looking at a daily, evening heart rate variability marker. It takes what's called a nocturnal reading. It's like the lowest marker of your evening on your watch, right? If you're on the Garmin system. And then it compares that with a 7-day average. And when your 7-day average, because 7-day average window is kind of like, well, this is recent. This is where you've been in the last week. We have good weeks, we have bad weeks in our life. And if all of a sudden you're having a bad week and your HRV is lower than what is deemed normal for you in that 60-day window, we get a little bit of a red flag, and we alert you there. So yeah, and it actually changes with a color code. You can see in this one we've got a purple marker, and that's probably because if we look towards today, we can see that. I'm assuming this is you, Marjaana.
That's me.
A little tired?
Marjaana has a little bit of a lower HRV for her 7-day window relative to her normal. So poor Marjaana, she's looking a little bit sad.
Struggling.
It's single parenting for a week with 3 kids, late
There you
nights and
go.
early mornings. So there we go.
There you go. There you go. And
Life
lots of
stress.
hard work with Athletica too. So yeah,
Yeah.
it all adds up. But yeah, so now might not be a great time for Marjaana to go and do a bunch of hit session, a bunch of hard work kind of thing. What we would now recommend is for Marjaana to do more of like an aerobic base training, like we were talking about in the former podcast. So that's probably the type of work that's more conducive to health for Marjaana. So pretty cool. Like I love that example. That's so good. And it even describes, like we actually, it described all those various different things. It's describing, the 7-day baseline, it has risen, basically below the normal range, right? And that is, it says, is usually reflective of higher than normal stress levels. Yes, that's Marjaana just acknowledged that, and can be a sign of an underlying condition or injury. Given that your HRV was lower than yesterday, consider overall life stressors. Make recovery a priority, both physically and mentally, especially if you're ill. I think it's such a good example, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
no one is perfect, and we all go through these periods of stress. Every single one of us. I'm under one myself right now, and yeah, this is life. And then, but Athletica can help us just be aware of these things and navigate our training accordingly. This is great example.
Wow. All right, so here are my takeaways. I'm just going to refer to charts, but the performance potential chart is helping us understand our current fitness, and it's the stress and load is quantified, and it's the main driver of day-to-day stress and training load, and it gives us confidence that we are moving in the right direction. The second one is that we have the charts for cycling, running, swimming, and rowing to help plan interval workouts and paces based on your time and your pace and power. And these anchor your training zones. And number three, as Marjaana is discovering, use the recovery charts to monitor your recovery when you link it to your Garmin device for resting heart rate, HRV, and gives you a chance to see, that kind of feeling that I have that maybe I'm a little tired and maybe I shouldn't do that hit session. It confirms that for you. So that is all for this week. Join us next week on the Athletes Compass podcast. Ask your training questions in the comments or on Athletica social media sites. And if you enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to give us a follow and a 5-star review. It would be awesome. 5 stars, not 1, but 5. If you could share this episode with one other person, just one other friend of yours, share the episode so they can see what we are doing here. For more information or to schedule a consultation with Paul, Marjaana, or myself, check the link in the show notes. For Marjaana Rakai and Dr. Paul Laursen, I am Paul Warloski, and this has been the Athletes Compass Podcast. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass Podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. We appreciate your comments and training questions and your 5-star reviews. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science Podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform Athletica.ai. Thanks for listening.